You know, it's going to be, well, soon enough, almost 60 years since I graduated from the seminary. And I remember those days so very, very fondly. And one of the things that would happen is whenever I was there on a Shabbat morning, I would do the Pesukei de Zimra, the preliminary service. And of course, I faced the Ark in those days. And in the front row behind me were the greatest scholars on Judaica in the world. And it was interesting because they were quite a diverse group. On the one hand, you had Saul Lieberman, who was the greatest authority on Talmud. And on the other side of the row, and I don't know if they were even too friendly, was Mordecai Kaplan. Mordecai Kaplan, who founded the Reconstructionist movement, although he didn't really go to the Reconstructionist movement, I mean, Mordecai Kaplan wore tzitzis. And one of the, you have to be lucky even when you publish a book. Mordecai Kaplan's book, Judaism as Civilization, which was one of the great classics of scholarship, was published in 1939, right before World War II. And that changed the direction of how at least the rabbis and the students in the seminary looked upon it, because there was, as is typical in Jewish history, a revanchement, a turning back to more scrupulous observance because of the horrors of the Holocaust. And so Mordecai Kaplan's ideas as Judaism as civilization really never caught on, and still has not caught on, really. And the truth of the matter is that the Reconstructionist movement has devolved, or revolved, whatever way you want to talk about it, to something that I'm sure Mordecai Kaplan would not even know, or certainly wouldn't like. But the whole idea of Judaism as civilization is really something that captured at least my mind. And I think one of the examples of that is that even in our religious service, we have interpolations such as this Yom LaYabasha, what you we put out, which unfortunately in our Siddur is, I don't know why. I mean, maybe the people who put the Siddur together were, well, I don't want to say anything amiss about them, but this is one of the great examples of Jewish poetry. And when we think in terms of the Jewish experience, it is a civilization. It's not only just what you would call a religion is not something that defines Judaism. That's a theological term that has nothing to do with us. We are a civilization. And as a civilization, it's not only, a religious, being very fervent and observant, because there's so much to be said about the Jewish experience. And sometimes I think that there are people who look at what is a Jewish experience, it's like the blind man with the elephant. People grab onto one thing and miss the big picture, because the big picture is the Jewish experience is not only religion, but poetry and literature. And one of the examples is this particular piyut. And that's an interesting thing, because even the word piyut, by the way, comes from the Greek. It is a song that is, or poetry that's interpolated into the religious service. Now, isn't that amazing? I mean, I don't know of another so-called religion that has this whole idea of literature and religious literature which flows from how the people take what is our tradition and put it into their lives. And this particular piyut, it's known as a geula because it's pushed into the last blessing before the tefillah. You'll notice that if you look at it, the verses go down the line and you'll get the name of the writer, Yehuda HaLevi. And that is one of the reasons why I was so upset that it was not included in the Siddur, because Yehuda HaLevi, Yehuda ben Shmuel HaLevi, is the greatest Hebrew poet of all times. And he's so very, very interesting because he is a fervent Zionist. You know, during the morning service in a very Orthodox synagogue, there are certain klagalieder, certain lamentations that will be said, which for whatever the reason, I guess they wanted to shorten the service, because conservative services don't have it. But one of them is his Zionides, which are his poems about Zion. And you know, one of the most famous poem about Zion, Zion halo tishali lishlom asirayach. Zion, will you not ask for the welfare of those who are captives, was taken up by the Russian Jews. And Natan Sharansky. This was something that inspired them. Because the life of Yehuda HaLevi is that he was born in Spain. They don't even know where he was born. They think about 1075. He was born in what was called Andalus, this Mohammedan, the Muslim part of Spain, just as it was going to undergo the Reconquista. And he left Spain and he traveled on the way to Israel. Because one of his poems is, he says, I am in the west, but my heart is in the east. And there's an idea that he stopped in Damietta in Egypt, and they wanted to detain him because he was so famous. And he wrote a poem, he says, if you want to really do a favor for me, send me forth and I will go forth to my Lord. And the thought is that he was killed either by a crusader or a Muslim on the road to Jerusalem. And, you know, he was so interesting because, you know, for all his great religious poems, he also wrote wine songs. And some of them, by the way, keep your tzitzis on, were homoerotic. Very interesting. One of his wine songs are homoerotic, and most people don't want to mention that and don't even want to think about it. But he influenced people even like Abraham ibn Ezra. And I just want to give you a little bit of see what he does with a biblical story as he puts it into this particular piyut, which, by the way, is filled with references that only, you know, if you really know your stuff, you know what the references are. And I just wanted to show you to line 15. Lemi zot nirshemet hakerna davar emet, lemi hachotemet v'hapatilim. To whom does this belong that it can be recognized? Look now, see it as a thing of truth, to whom is the seal and the string. Now, if you remember the story of Judah in Vayigash, that after his sons die, Er and Onan, he doesn't want his son Shelah to get married to Tamar. So he doesn't do anything and he keeps Shelah back. Tamar therefore dresses up, and this is very interesting, Tamar dresses up as a prostitute, and Judah goes unto her, and as he leaves, he says, well, what I'm paid? She says, well, give me a deposit. And she asks for his seal, the seal that he has, and a string that he has. And it so happens that she's pregnant, which was going to be the ancestor of David. Now, this is very interesting. The ancestor of David is actually from an illicit union. And when Judah finds out that she is pregnant, he says, well, she has prostituted herself, take her out and let her be burnt. So when she's going to be burned, she shows him the seal and the string, and he realizes that he is guilty, not her. He is guilty, not her. And so she is saved and becomes the ancestor of David. I mean, this is an interesting story within itself. But look what Yehuda HaLevi does with it. He says, look now and see what is impressed. Recognize now a word of truth. Lemi ha-chotemet. Now, to the chotemet here, he is referring to the bris, the brit milah. And ha-petilim are the tzitzit. And so he's saying to God, we are celebrating the going out from Egypt, but we're still in exile. We are in exile. We're not in the land of Israel. And therefore, on this holiday of Passover, where we, especially on the seventh day, we're talking about the going across the Yom Suf, whatever body of water it was, that we have a history, and with this also a literature which has enriched our lives and turned our eyes to a final redemption and the restoration which has occurred of the people in their land. Lemizot nirshemet, haker na davar emet, lemi hachotemet v'hapetilim. Page 155, Musaf Kaddish.